This video is about to be a giant dumpster fire, so definitely try and prepare yourself mentally because we're going to be diving deep on the sloppiest mess in all of 2019, which is surprisingly Pokemon Sword and Shield. What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, and if you've been subscribed for a bit, I'm sure you know that I don't consider myself the biggest Poke fan. I actually own a lot of the games, I've beaten most of them, and I do enjoy the franchise, but typically after I catch a couple legendaries and beat the Elite Four, I normally just move on. It's not one of those things that I stick around with for months and months and months, but there is a separate group that pretty much only plays Pokemon, and I actually kind of understand that. I mean, since each of the games has a different set of Pokemon, new sorts of systems like team battles and new styles of items and elements, it's one of those things that you can become very, very emotionally invested in the universe since each new game really kind of introduces an all-new style of play. And I'll admit that I was really getting excited for the idea of Pokemon Sword and Shield to a huge degree because this is the beginning of an all-new style. I mean, it's going to be on the Nintendo Switch. That means that by necessity, this game is going to be bigger, it's going to be more impressive, and graphically, this could be the next step in Nintendo's style. And yet, it turned out to be a complete freaking cash grab. So, over the course of the last 24 hours, everything has completely exploded on the internet because data miners have managed to get a hold of early copies of Pokemon Sword and Shield. And what they're doing is going through the code line by line and discovering what's actually going on behind the scenes. And surprisingly, it sounds like this game is made for incredibly low budget. They cut out half of the total Pokemon. Hundreds and hundreds of your favorite little beasties have just been removed in order to save time. But more than this, a lot of people are upset because now we have some pretty concrete evidence as to the fact that they recycled hundreds of animations. Part of the reason that they were originally saying that they had to remove these Pokemon by force is because, well, there's just so many of them, we can't make 1,000 different animations. Well, it turns out they made none. It looks like about 90% of the total content in this game has been cut from previous games and copy-pasted here. You are literally paying $60 for a $40 game that came out a couple years ago. In fact, people have even managed to compare things like certain character animations, like literally, there are times, I'm sorry I'm like laughing, this is so stupid to me, there are times where there are literally characters standing in the background who have like an animation, they just took those characters and put them in like Pokemon gyms. Because Game Freak does not care, which is why currently, over on Twitter, the #1 trending hashtag is Game Freak Lied. People are going through all the crazy stuff that just clearly points out that they don't care. This to them is just a little crappy job of whatever, you guys want some pocket monsters, we don't care, we're burned out, and they just throw out garbage. But what's really baffling, and part of the reason I think people are being very, very stirred up today, is the embargo is released. All the big major gaming websites, which are the only people, strangely, who are allowed to review the game, they gave it very good scores. This is getting a bunch of 8s and 9s. I mean, IGN gave it a 9.3. A game that cuts 50% of the content and recycles another like 90% is somehow considered a brand new invigorating experience. How is it that a game can be practically a remake but be considered fresh and new? Now there is some additional content. There is things like the giant new raid battles and the open world sections, but it's hard to even enjoy those aspects of it when you look at all the technical flaws. So the people who have leaked it have been posting all sorts of hilarious glitches because they're everywhere. Like one of the ones that had me just cracking up, I mean, I was literally laughing until I had tears down my face, is when you climb a ladder, the whole world freezes. You start climbing a ladder like freaking Death Stranding and everybody just goes, "What? How do you make a glitch like that?" But this is only one tiny thing. The game is filled with stuff like this. Like times where you're walking along and just mailboxes pop up randomly. Characters appearing out of thin air. It's just so lazy. This company is making billions. That is not an exaggeration. Maybe you've never heard this number, but Pokemon is actually the highest profiting single franchise of entertainment ever, of all time. It's made like $700 billion or something insane because everybody buys it. And not only are there the Pokemon games, there's Pokemon shirts, action figures, hats, Nike shoes. You could literally, when I was a kid, there were like these light up shoes that had Pikachu on it, and each time you took a step, it was like he was thunderbolting. How do you have infinite money and then still make the laziest game possible? Now, this is just my perspective because I obviously haven't played it yet. All the reviewers claim that it's a masterpiece and the best in the franchise, despite the fact that it is the tiniest piece of content yet. Now, personally, the thing that definitely aggravates me the most, and really is the reason I feel like this might be a little bit of a ripoff, is because data miners have already been digging up things that are not yet released, things that are in the game that are coming up, and one of them is definitely super egregious, which is that apparently right now you can't transfer games, you can't transfer Pokemon from the older games to the newest game. In order to do that, there's going to be a program that's released later on. I think it's called Pokebank. Now, what it's going to do is it lets you take your Pokemon, put them in the bank, pick them up on your Switch. That's pretty standard, right? Except here's the thing, data miners have discovered that when you put your Pokemon in the bank, it's going to remove certain moves. That means if you have a guy that you've been training for years, imagine it's like your original Charizard, you've had him for 20 years, and then boom, he loses some of his skills for absolutely no reason, just because they didn't want to program those reused animations. They didn't want to have the Fire Blast from Pokemon Sun and Moon to be in Sword and Shield. This sounds like such a ridiculous thing, and I'm kind of curious what the sales numbers end up being. Typically, every single Game Freak game sells an astronomical amount. I mean, Pokemon prints money, it's undeniable, but with the way that people seem to be very, very upset with last year when we got Pokemon Let's Go, and the fact that this seems like a skimmed-down cash grab, I'm actually very, very curious who's going to be lining up at midnight. I mean, despite the fact that right now people are very, very aggravated, are Pokemon fans still going to fork over $60? I mean, how many people are going to be buying both versions of it? How many people are going to be spending $120 tonight at midnight to try and scoop these freaking ripoffs up? It's hard to say, but to me, this is super bad. Also, here is my opinion. I am going to be buying a copy because I want to make a video on it. I'm going to make a big giant impressions video. My plan is to buy it like Thursday night, and I want to play it for like 24 hours and do a big video either Friday or Saturday, and I want to talk about what this actually plays like. As somebody who enjoys RPGs and is definitely a casual fan of Pokemon, how does it actually play? Is it worth really jumping into, or is this just some sort of lazy, crappy Nintendo project? I want to see for myself, because right now I am so conflicted as to how is it getting 8s and 9s all over the place, and yet is literally the tiniest Pokemon we've gotten in a long time. Game Freak lied. In their interviews, they gave excuses for why they were having to remove so much content, and it's flat out untrue. I'm still just so blown away that this actually happened, and to be honest, I'm disappointed. I wanted this to be Breath of the Wild Pokemon. I wanted it to be the next step in an already amazing franchise, and instead, it is a lazy flop. It's very hard not to be overwhelmed by disappointment that this is what we come to, but hey, I guess that's just the current gaming future. What's going to be coming next? The small defense I'll give is that we have seen in the past, sometimes whenever there's a new console, the first Pokemon sucks. It's when they're trying to figure things out, so they a lot of times are trying to experiment with the tech. Maybe that's why this game has a terrible frame rate and so much reused content, but honestly, it doesn't seem like it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Have you been looking at all the Pokemon leaks? Is any of this really kind of discouraging to you? Or maybe it's just me that's totally crazy? Tell me what you think in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. This is so weird. What? They could have made a good game and made like $1 trillion. And instead, they tried to save a little bit of cash and made trash. What the hell? Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.